ASMR, ASMR, ASMR. I am the aforementioned Oob, of course, and today we are doing a little bit of a what I've been reading kind of book ramble chat thing. I'm just posing for a thumbnail really quickly over here while I say these things. I think we should be good. So yeah, the three books that I'll be talking about are Breakfast at Tiffany's. Well, I guess not because this black book, this physical item, is actually Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is like a novella. I would say it's like 99 pages, and then a few other short stories. So I have not finished this whole thing, or have read this whole thing. I finished the titular story, Breakfast at Tiffany's. So I'll chat about that. I actually finished this earlier today. I had such a nice kind of, my couch over here is like right next to a window, and I get really good like sunlight over there in the morning. And I just had such a great time. I made myself a cup of pour over coffee, and then I was just kind of laying across the couch and finished the story, which was so wonderful with the sun, the morning sun hitting my face. So that was a wonderful little time that I had. So I'll chat about Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. I think I've mentioned this in my previous book haul or some other book haul. Next up, I will talk about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. I think I got this like after my most recent book haul. So yeah, I think, I'll get into it as we go. But yeah, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. And then finally, another one that I've mentioned in my latest book haul, Nausea by JPS by Jean-Paul Sartre. So I also have a cup of tea over here, and I would recommend, if you're in the mood to procure yourself the beverage of your choice, you can just relax, have a sup while you listen to my inane dumb rambles about these wonderful pieces of literature. So let's start. Let's go in the order of like how far I am. As I said, I finished Breakfast at Tiffany's, the story, not this whole like book. I enjoyed it. I think initially, so I guess I'll give you kind of an overview about what the book is about. It is from the perspective of a writer. What is the writer's name? From the first person perspective of it doesn't really matter. But so it's from the perspective of this writer who lives in New York City in the 40s. I believe it's the 40s. Yes, in the 40s, the 1940s. And he has a woman, his neighbor in his apartment building, whose name is Holly Golightly, who's played by Audrey Hepburn in the movie, which I haven't seen. And it's just about him like telling the story of their friendship, their relationship. I think it actually, like, him telling the story is like yes, so he's like telling us the story in hindsight. I don't think it says like what, like it's current day, the writer like telling us the story of like back then when he knew Holly. I'm not sure when like the current day is, but yeah, it starts with him kind of like he starts, I'm always drawn back to the places where I loved, their houses and their neighborhoods, and then he goes back to, I used to live in this apartment and there was this woman, Holly Golightly, and he talks about how he meets her, and then kind of it goes on from there. And it's quite interesting. I actually found it to be like reminisce. And by the way, Holly Golightly is this very kind of like a party girl. She has lots of people at her house all the time. She's always entertaining. She's very outgoing and a little like blunt and a little rude. But yeah, she's just this very outgoing, very sort of like bubbly person that the main character is just so, the writer, the main character is just so fascinated with, and they sort of become friends. And it just follows like all her various romances and relationships, and I don't want to spoil like too much about what happens because I think it's actually really interesting. I find it to be similar in kind of these, in modern times. I think there are lots of these kind of works that are kind of deconstructing this idea of the like manic pixie dream girl, or like the dream girl, dream person in general, like 500 Days of Summer, or even like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Although I will say probably more the graphic novel kind of deals in what I'm speaking about, where it's like, it starts with the main character just falling so in love with this dream person and how they imagine how perfect and cool they are, and then over time they realize so much of that was just the image that they like had of them in their mind, and they are actually a real person with like emotional depth and things going on in their own lives. So they do like live beyond the trope that is created in like the main character's head. And I think this is sort of similar, but again in the 40s. So the main character starts out being like somewhat in love with her, just being so fascinated by her, and then over time in the story you learn more and more about where she's from and her past, and how she has a lot going on and her own issues and stuff. So it's like deconstructing like the main character's view of who Holly Golightly is, and kind of over time realizing how like she's her own person. She's not this like, oh my god, this like dream woman on a pedestal. She's more than that, and I found that to be quite interesting. The kind of language used is quite dated. Again, I think, when was it written? I want to say like the 50s. Yeah, I think it was in like the 50s. So I think, wait, 58 is when Breakfast at Tiffany's was released. So it's a bit of its time in just the language, and although it's mostly Holly, I think she, even though it took some time for me to adjust to just like the sensibilities of the characters. But I think also the point is made that Holly is kind of insensitive. Oh my god, I forgot. Like the main character says, "Oh, Holly said this," but like he was like, I don't know, that was a little, I don't know about that. So again, kind of adding to the fact that she's not this perfect, character for the main character, perfect person, this perfect being for the main character to just fall in love with. She's kind of an asshole sometimes. The main character is a kind of an asshole sometimes too. But yeah, I think it's just such a cool, fascinating exploration of this friendship and how it develops, and how there are times when the characters really dislike each other, but then they always kind of come back and kind of move on. And yeah, it's just a really interesting exploration of like how we kind of see people, and then the fact that they are like real people beyond what we imagine them to be, which I always find quite interesting. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I have not watched the film. I probably will at some point. But yeah. I'm just going to now look through and find like some of my favorite phrases that I have underlined. I was watching a Mauve ASMR video recently. She's like one of my favorites of all time. She's so wonderful. she had a video recently where she spoke about how she like annotates her books, and she said that she uses like her bookmark to like underline with like straight lines. And I remember watching that video and thinking I could never do that. I always like underline freehand, and it would feel so weird for me to do it any other way. And I don't know, I always find it cool to like see how other people do things and how they're different to you and how we're all kind of unique and like different in our own ways. I don't know, it made me feel a little happy. How do you annotate your books? If you do, please tell me. Do you like freehand it? Do you even annotate at all? Do you like make sure the lines are straight? And also, like, saying that she like underlines with a bookmark is like a ruler. I'm also thinking like I never have a real bookmark. I always use like some random piece of like cardboard. Like I'll show you in like Fear and Loathing. This is my bookmark right now. This is part of the like cardboard packaging of some chewing gum. My chewing gum of choice, Infinity. Which, as you can see, is not straight. But yeah, I think that's just another, an aspect of my personality shown in how I interact with my books. Anyways, let's try to find a little underlined thing that I can read to you. This is just fun. This is more about the writer, not about Holly. First off, I'd been fired from my job, deservedly, and for an amusing misdemeanor too complicated to recount here. I just think that's so fun. And then here's another thing. So Holly has many men that she's like sort of in these like strange relationships with, like romances with. And then the main character says, if Holly could marry that absurd fetus, then the army of wrongness rampant in the world might as well march over me. Or, and the question is apparent, was my outrage a little the result of being in love with Holly myself? A little, for I was in love with her. So, as you can see, I think this is like after they have like a falling out. This is the writer kind of speaking about what happened, but yeah. And then here's a Holly quote. She says, "Never love a wild thing, Mr. Bell." Actually, let me not read that because that's like a little spoilers for one of the like fun twists. Yeah, I want to get like a passage that kind of shows you who like Holly's personality a little bit. I did not do a lot of underlining, I'm noticing, in this book. In the story, let me rather say. You know what, I give up. I'm not going to find anything. But yes, overall, I enjoyed breakfast at Tiffany's. As I said, quite an interesting exploration into this character and also the relationship, the friendship, the kind of at times tumultuous friendship between the main character and Holly Golightly, and then also the main character learning that Holly Golightly is more than just his like dream woman. She has her own life and complications and things. But yes, that was breakfast at Tiffany's. Next up, we have quite a different piece of work. This is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. I have not finished this. I am like 53 pages in. Yeah, this is crazy. This is very chaotic, and absurd, but it's really fun to read. It's really exciting, and I've underlined a lot of phrases in here that I think are just funny phrases. But I'll read the blurb over here. Hunter S. Thompson is driving to Las Vegas with his attorney, the Samoan, to find the dark side of the American dream. Roaring down the desert highway from Los Angeles, they realize there's only one way to go about such a perilous task, getting very, very twisted. Armed with a drug arsenal of stupendous proportions, the duo engage in a manic, surreal tour of the sleaze capital of the world. The sleaze capital of the world. Their perilous, chemically enhanced confrontations with casino operators, police officers, and assorted middle Americans have a hallucinatory humor and nightmare terror. That's a good description. Hallucinatory humor and nightmare terror. Riotously funny, daringly original, and dead serious at its core, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a classic statement on the collapsed dream of the American 60s. So, and then the artwork is by Ralph Steadman. He has some like illustrations in the novel as well. I guess first I'll just talk about like the formatting, because I think it's so interesting. Like, look at how this struck me so much. Look at how close to the bottom the words go, the text goes. Like, that is, I don't know, it like, in some ways, just the fact that it goes down so close to the bottom, it like makes me stress a little bit. It like gives me a little bit of anxiety, but I think that like adds to the experience of reading it, just because like as like I read here, it's like quite a chaotic, crazy experience, and I think the small amount of like stress of like it feels like you're falling off the page when you see this. Like, let me compare it to like Breakfast at Tiffany's. You see, like, look at the amount of space at the bottom of the page, like very comfortable, like it gives you time to be like, okay, now I need to go to the next page. This one, you're like going right to the bottom, and I think that little detail adds so much. And it's like that, along with the artwork so well. Like, let me find a PG drawing. Not that many of them are like, yeah. So it has like Ralph Steadman's illustrations of some of the like characters and scenarios, and there are also like ink splatters like here throughout as well. And I think it's just so much fun. It just all adds to the like chaotic, crazy, like hallucinatory content of the novel. And then I guess to start, I'll just read you some of the chapter titles. So this is the one I'm at right now: Paranoid Terror and the Awful Spectre of Sodomy, a flashing of knives and green water. So yes, as the blurb mentioned, this is about Hunter S. Thompson, who is a writer, a journalist, and his attorney, driving to Las Vegas and trying to write a piece about this big kind of marathon, like motorbike race that's going on, and with a lot of like drugs and stuff, and just the craziness that ensues. And this is it's like gonzo journalism, which is basically, it's like semi-biographical. So again, it's about Hunter S. Thompson, who is as like the real author, and but Hunter S. Thompson, I guess the best way to describe like gonzo, there's a chapter, like there's like a little blurb at the end of the book, like in the appendix, about what is gonzo, but my understanding is that it is extremely subjective, like journalism. So this is about some real things that did happen, but it's very objective. And let me actually just read you an excerpt. Oh, or title page on the inside. This is also a film directed by, or there's a film adaptation directed by Terry Gilliam, which stars Johnny Depp as Hunter S. Thompson. I have not watched it. I've seen some clips, and it looks to like recreate the vibe quite well from what I've seen. Also, like Terry Gilliam, I just like Brazil is like so cool from the 80s that he directed, and also like the Monty Python stuff. So I think he seems to have been a very good choice of director for this craziness. But yeah, I haven't seen the whole film, only clips. Anyway, I'll just read the first few sentences so you can get an idea of like what we're getting into here. We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, I feel a bit lightheaded, maybe you should drive. And suddenly there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping and screeching and diving around the car, which was going about 100 miles an hour with the top down to Las Vegas, and a voice screaming, "Holy Jesus, what are all these goddamn animals?" And then it was quiet again. My attorney had taken his I can't speak. My attorney had taken his shirt off and was pouring beer on his chest to facilitate the tanning process. "What the hell are you yelling about?" he muttered. Staring up at the sun with his eyes closed and covered with wraparound Spanish sunglasses. "Never mind," I said. "It's your turn to drive." So yeah, that's just the first like paragraph and a half. Yeah, here's another little illustration of the hitchhiker that they pick up on their way to Las Vegas. But yeah, it's very crazy. There are lots of like funny phrases. Obviously, like they are on drugs almost the whole time. Hunter and the Samoan, his attorney, and it's just so funny, and it's quite satirical as well about just like American 60s culture. There's one specific passage. I'm just going to say some of the things I underlined that I thought were funny phrases. Warning, this is like weird stuff. Hallucinations are bad enough, but after a while you learn to cope with things like seeing your dead grandmother crawling up your leg with a knife in her teeth. Most acid fanciers can handle this sort of thing. I just found that so funny. And then there is another. A very painful experience, and in that he's talking about Joe Frazier beating Muhammad Ali in their fight. A very painful experience in every way. A proper end to the 60s. Tim Leary, a prisoner of Eldridge Cleaver in Algeria. Bob Dylan, clipping coupons in Greenwich Village. Both Kennedys murdered by mutants. Owsley folding napkins on Terminal Island, and finally Cassius/Ali belted incredibly off his pedestal by a human hamburger. A man on the verge of death. Joe Frazier, like Nixon, had finally prevailed for reasons that people like me refused to understand, at least not out loud. And then he says, but that was some other era, burned out and long gone from the brutish realities of this foul year of our Lord, 1971. I fumbled that so hard. Let me try that again. But that was some other era, burned out and long gone from the brutish realities of this foul year of our Lord, 1971. So it's very fun, very playful, quite dark. Also, that guy's a paranoid psychotic anyway. They're easy to spot. I think the attorney says that after they have a little argument with someone. But yeah, it's been very fun, very entertaining to read. And yeah, it's crazy. Chaotic, as I said, dark, lots of like sardonic humor, but I've been enjoying it so much so far. But yeah, I look forward to reading the to watching the Terry Gilliam's film adaptation, because yeah, I've loved everything that Terry Gilliam. Obviously, after I finished reading this book, I look forward to watching the movie, because Terry Gilliam is really cool. I've enjoyed everything of his that I've seen so far. You know, his Monty Python stuff and Brazil. So I'm looking forward to seeing that eventually. Well, not eventually, after I finish the book. Finally, we have Nausea by JPS. This one I have not read that much of, but yeah, it's also about a writer, but it is more about like his like philosophical like journey, as he's like learning about the subject that he wants to like write a novel about, a book about. This one, I'm only like 20 pages into. I haven't like had a full reading session yet. Only like read it like before I go to sleep and whatever. So I don't want to speak on it that much, but I will. Let me actually find where the title comes from. I think it gives you a good idea of like where this is, you know. Here's a line that I thought was very interesting. So this is the main character is like in a bar, and he says, "All the same, I am ill at ease for half an hour. I've been avoiding looking at this glass of beer. I look above, below, right and left, but the glass itself I don't want to see. And I know very well that all the bachelors around me can't help me in any way. It is too late. I can no longer take refuge among them." So yeah, it's a lot about him just kind of going through his life and having these thoughts about, you know, what his life means, very existential. I mean, it's Jean-Paul Sartre, who is a quite famous existential philosopher and writer. So this kind of delves into all of that kind of stuff, which I tend to enjoy. Yeah, I'm still trying to look for the part where he speaks about nausea. There we go. Objects ought not to touch, since they are not alive. You use them, you put them back in their place, you live among them. They are useful, nothing more. But they touch me, it's unbearable. I am afraid of entering in contact with them, just as if they were living animals. Now I see. I remember better what I felt the other day on the seashore when I was holding that pebble. It was a sort of sweet disgust, how unpleasant it was. And it came from the pebble, I'm sure of that. It passed from the pebble into my hands. Yes, that's it. That's exactly it. A sort of nausea in the hands. So, although I found this very relatable, he says, I am not accustomed to telling myself what happens to me, so I find it hard to remember the exact succession of events, and I can't make out what is important. So yeah, a lot of sort of contemplative writing and thoughts, which I find interesting. It might not be for everyone, but yeah, it's just a fun phrase. Monsieur de Rollebon was extremely ugly. This is I think the subject of the book that the main character is writing. Queen Marie Antoinette was fond of calling him her dear monkey. Yet he had all the women of the court, not by clowning light like Fauchelevent the baboon, but by a magnetism which drove his beautiful victims to the worst excesses of passion. That phrase, a magnetism which drove his beautiful victims to the worst excesses of passion, I just like that phrase so much. He had all the women of the court, not by clowning like Fauchelevent the baboon, but by a magnetism, which drove his beautiful victims to the worst excesses of actually just do a video speaking about at some point philosophy and like this, and probably like some of Camus stuff. But I don't know. We shall see. I think on that note, friends, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you enjoyed. I might do this now that I'm like actually into the habit of like spending time during the day to really like read. I think I might do this a little more regularly, maybe like monthly. We'll see. Or maybe just when I feel like I want to talk about the books, I have something interesting to say. But yeah, we shall see. Again, thank you for watching this video, for spending this time with me. I will see you